This video is brought to you by AudioQuest, makers of the Dragonfly range of USB DACs. Click to AudioQuest.com for more information.
Hi-Fi is like ice cream. I said this in a recent video, and I mean it. We just have to find the flavor that we like the most. Or not even the most, just find a flavor that we like. But unlike a frozen dessert, we don't kind of eat through a hi-fi product in 5 or 10 minutes. Hopefully, we are choosing our next pair of speakers or amplifier or DAC or turntable or whatever to last us for, years. Or maybe if you're a hi-fi mentalist like me, maybe just a few months. But hi-fi is more expensive, it's more costly than ice cream. And that introduces a much higher level of buyer anxiety because we don't want to buy the wrong thing, do we? Now, I started buying hi-fi properly way back in the early 90s. And there was no internet back then, or nothing to speak of in terms of like hi-fi reviews or anything like that. And so what I would do is I would rely on print magazines, and my print magazine of choice was What Hi-Fi. And I would, buy a new copy, I would read some of the reviews. I would also look in the back where there was a recommended components section. And from that information, I would build a short list of say 2 or 3 different possibilities, different candidates. And then I would take the train to London and I would go and listen to those 3 possible candidates at a real hi-fi store. Now, obviously, there was no way I would buy blind. That's why I bought What Hi-Fi. But the reason I went to, in this case, Richer Sounds and London Bridge, was so that I could go and listen for myself. Very, very important, because basically there was no way back then that I knew of dealing with a product that I could not return after the fact if I didn't like it. So I had to make sure that my in-store auditions were thorough enough that I'd chosen the right product for me with a reasonable degree of confidence. And even if there were a right to return, and maybe I just didn't know about it, I certainly couldn't afford the return trip to London, so to go a second time, to bring the pair of speakers or the amplifier or whatever I didn't like back and then choose another one. Because I was broke in the 90s. And don't forget, there was no eBay back in the 90s. There were no hi-fi forums to speak of through which I could sell a product which I didn't like. So I was really stuck with something once I'd bought it. So I kind of had to like it. Now, when I moved to Australia in the early 2000s, the internet had kind of begun to develop a little bit and there were forums around. And so there were the occasional review online. There was a smattering of hi-fi coverage, so I could use a little bit of that. But generally speaking, even in Australia, I still bought What Hi-Fi to help me build a short list of say 2 or 3 different possibilities that I could then go to my local store and audition, assuming they had all 3. See, the thing is though, in Australia, there are hi-fi brands that don't really get a lot of coverage outside of Australia. I'm thinking of brands like Cricks, who I was really into in the early noughties. So when I went to my local hi-fi store, there was the obvious NAD and Cambridge and things like that. Okay, we're pausing there. So when I bought my first 2, maybe 3 different pairs of Cricks speakers, I had to listen to them for myself. There was no other way to judge. There were no reviews online that I could find. So the in-store audition was absolutely fundamental to my buying process, right? Listen for myself and then make a call. And after I'd bought a couple of pairs of speakers or a couple of things from the same dealer, occasionally they'd let me borrow something to take it home to engage in a home audition, because a home audition is the best audition possible, second to the store audition. But that didn't happen too often. But one thing I loved about, say for example, let me give a shout out to Apollo Hi-Fi in Marrickville in Sydney, because they had a whole bunch of speakers connected up to a switch box. So being able to like A/B a pair of speakers in store was super easy. I think the name of the chap that runs that store is called John, good name. So yeah, like I have fond memories of doing that. I mean, obviously with amplifiers, you know, John had to move them in and out, but it was just, you know, the store salesman was fundamental to the audition process, which in turn was fundamental to me listening for myself. And as the noughties progressed, I got deeper and deeper and deeper into hi-fi gear. And I kind of slowly realized that, yeah, hi-fi was like ice cream. There were many different flavors available at many different price points. And I kind of realized also that the reason that there were many different flavors available, even at one price point, was because manufacturers were making different design priorities or taking different design decisions, but they were also making different design compromises according to the build price that the corporate overlords had given them, because everything is built to a price, pretty much, even the really expensive stuff pretty much is built to a price. So those compromises meant that, you know, we had, like ice cream, just different flavors available to us. I'd say €1,000, €2,000, €3,000, although I didn't really shop north of €2,000 until, well, 2012, something like that. But in the late noughties, to sort of maximize my experiences with many different bits of hi-fi gear, what I ended up doing was buying something, living with it for a few months, and then selling it again. Now that is kind of an expensive way to indulge in the hi-fi hobby. I don't think it's a hobby. I think it's a bit like wearing trousers, you know, it's kind of essential. But, you know, it became pretty costly after a time, because that meant that the cost of a home audition, which is really what I was doing, an extended home audition, was the difference between what I bought something for and what I sold something for. So to circumvent this, so in order to kind of expose myself to as much hi-fi gear as possible, but without taking too much of a haircut on each piece, what I ended up doing was either buying things on special so that my sell price 2 months down the line was pretty close to my buy price, or more frequently what I used to do was buy used, because by the late 2000s, the late noughties, I was well entrenched on a local hi-fi forum, and I could buy something on there, live with it for a few months, and then sell it again. And I even met a guy who became a friend after a while, actually, and he did this as well. In fact, he, I guess, was the inspiration for my attacking hi-fi this way, because what he told me he had a spreadsheet of everything, every piece of hi-fi he'd ever bought. He got the buy price and the sale price. And sometimes he'd lose money, but occasionally he'd make money. So that in the long term, on average, buying and selling and just trying things out would cost him not very much at all. And that's really where I landed. You know, like I would buy something used and then sell it again, and sometimes I'd not lose too much. Sometimes I'd even make a little bit. But in the long-term average, yeah, I wouldn't really lose too much. So that would allow me to listen for myself extensively and at home. Now, 12 years down the line as I guess a full-time hi-fi review person, the review samples come to me, the home demos come to me. But the thing is manufacturers and sometimes distributors don't often let me keep a product for more than a couple of months. I mean, even that is pushing their generosity, you know, quite a bit. So for certain items that I want to keep around for, say, 12 months, I buy them. And then after a couple of years, I'll sell them again. But I get to experience that product for an extended period. And yeah, I mean, I probably won't take too much of a haircut, because I'll get a discount when I buy it, so that when I sell it, I can sell it for close to what I bought it for and then not lose too much. And again, my experience is being broadened. So I'm not just listening to the stuff I review, but also the stuff that I want to feature in videos. I'll give you an example, the Rega Planar 8. I'm not reviewing that. I'm never reviewing that. That's for me. That's the way I indulge my own curiosity with the hi-fi hobby without kind of having it worn down by my job, because if I review everything, it's just going to become an obligation rather than a job that's fueled by curiosity and enthusiasm, and also like your hobbyist enthusiasm, right? So that's how I keep myself fresh, by buying things and playing with them for an extended period. Another example is over here, the Apple AirPods Max. I'm never reviewing those, but I bought them just so I could listen to them for an extended period, and then I'll probably sell them again at the end of it. I've already given a pair away on my Patreon, so maybe I'll give them away. I don't know yet, we'll see. But before I bought those AirPods Max, I went to the Apple store. I had a listen for myself. I auditioned them for myself so I could get an inkling as to whether I would like them if I got them home. I did. Yes, hi-fi shows like Munich High End, like the Bristol Hi-Fi Show, those are okay places to kind of get an inkling of what something might sound like. But I would never, ever buy something on the back of a hi-fi show audition. There are too many variables in play, like different room, different music, different ancillaries. Just no. I would always kind of go, oh, that looks interesting, and then try and find a local dealer where I could follow up with him or her and listen for myself. For somebody who is as deep as me into hi-fi, and maybe you'll probably know that the internet conversation about hi-fi is louder than ever, which I think is a fantastic thing. However, it's not hard to find places where people are more unpleasant about what you buy, and they'll quite happily tell you that you'd be an idiot to spend your money on that thing or this thing. And they do so as if it were their money. Or, and some of them, they really do think that they are saving you from yourself. The hubris of that is just, it boggles my mind. And yeah, we kind of covered this in the last video, didn't we? Like, it's your money, you do as you please with it. Especially as we're talking about hi-fi and not medical treatment, right? Hi-fi, it's entertainment. You're spending your disposable income on a good that is intended to entertain you, not save your life. And that's all the more reason why you shouldn't buy something based upon somebody else's opinion, whether it be positive or negative. So reviewers like me are good for product discovery, or for maybe helping you narrow your choice of possible purchase candidates down to a few things, right? A bit like how I used What Hi-Fi back in the 90s. But you shouldn't really buy something exclusively on the back of my opinion. Get a field of opinions. Go and read somebody else's coverage, watch some other YouTube video, and only use those to build a shortlist, because ultimately you're going to have to do some legwork. You're going to have to go to your local dealer, or maybe a friend's house. Maybe a friend's bought something that you want to hear. But you always, always, always have to listen for yourself. And if you don't trust the high street dealer's demo room, or the environment in which you're asked to demo something, you might be able to get something either on loan, or maybe you pay for it up front with the right of return for an exchange if you don't like it. I mean, some dealers work like that. It depends. It varies from country to country, from city to city, but it is possible. But I do realize that not everybody has a dealer even near them, which is really I think the wonderful thing about the internet nowadays is not only does the internet enable us to find things more easily, but it allows us to buy things more easily, and also return them if we don't like them more easily. So the most obvious one is Amazon. Yes, it comes with a whole bunch of environmental and societal baggage, but it does give us 30 days of return. I've just bought a Sonos amp, right? It arrived just now. That's what the doorbell was for. And yeah, I've got that on 100 days return. So if I don't like it, I can send it back. Oh, and I should also give a shout out to headphones.com, because I always forget these guys, but they sell loads of headphone gear, right? And I think they ship worldwide. Their return policy, as far as I understand it, is for 365 days, a full year. You can try something out for a whole year. If you don't like it after a few months, you can send it back. I think that's astonishing. No high street dealer would give you that. Many manufacturers like Schitt, like Zoo, like Bookart are selling direct from their factory to the consumer now, also with a time-limited home demo. But yeah, you have to put your cash down up front. You have to make some effort. There's no kind of magic bullet to helping you find out what you want. You've got to do some work in order to, and this is what home demos are for, this is what buying, trying, and then returning if you don't like, you have to listen for yourself. No exceptions. I think choosing and auditioning hi-fi gear has never been as easy as it is now. It's way easier than it was back in the early 90s when I started out. And that's not me saying, oh, I did it really tough back then. Not at all. Like, I quite enjoyed that process. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Is kind of funneling all the possibilities into, say, a short list of 3 or 5, and then going to a store or buying them and then trying them at home and listening for yourself. That, for me, is half the fun. So listening for yourself is not only essential, it's fun. I think it is anyway. I think it's pivotal for me, for my enjoyment. I mean, you get an excitement from going to listen to something for yourself. Or maybe you come away disappointed and then you've eliminated something, so you know you've not wasted your money. But yeah, it's never been easier to do this now that the internet is so advanced and e-commerce is so far down the road. Although the hi-fi industry has a long way to go still, because I anticipate many more manufacturers going, if not factory direct, but just cutting out distributors maybe in certain territories. Sorry, distributors. But some companies will do this. So I think, we're still in a state of flux. I think the pandemic is accelerating this a little bit, maybe. I'm guessing here, I don't know. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I look forward to your insightful and polite thoughts. And if you dig this video, please consider giving it a like down below. If you like my attitude towards high-end audio, in that, yeah, you really should always listen for yourself, then please consider subscribing to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.